Husband blame me for divorce and in-laws, join him so I sit his sister down and tell her his secret. He said I ruined our marriage because I couldn't keep up with his ambitions. His family nodded along, their eyes cold, as if I'd single-handedly torched their golden son's future. I stood there, swallowing my rage, knowing the truth he'd buried deeper than his wedding vows. My name is Clara, and I was married to Ethan for 7 years. We met in college, where his charm was as bright as his promises. He was the guy who could talk his way into anything: a job, a room, my heart. I was a graphic designer, building a small but steady career, while Ethan chased his dream of becoming a tech mogul. I supported him through late nights, unpaid internships, and endless pitches to investors. I believed in him, even when he started believing he was too big for our little life. The cracks started small. Ethan began staying out late, claiming networking. His phone was always face down, his texts guarded. I'd ask about his day, and he'd snap, saying I wouldn't understand his world. I wasn't enough anymore, not polished, not connected, not the trophy he thought he deserved. By year 5, he was spending more time at fancy dinners with colleagues than at home with me. I kept quiet, thinking love meant patience. I was wrong. Last year, Ethan sat me down and said he wanted a divorce. "You're holding me back." "Clara," he said, his voice flat, "I need someone who matches my vision." I was stunned, not because I didn't see it coming, but because he'd rewritten our story to make me the villain. He told his family I was lazy, uninspired, and checked out of the marriage. His parents, who once called me their daughter, turned icy. His mother, Diane, even said, "We expected better for Ethan." His sister, Mia, stayed quiet but avoided my calls. The betrayal stung worse than the divorce papers. I moved out, renting a tiny apartment and piecing myself back together. I threw myself into my work, designing logos for startups, finding solace in creating something beautiful from chaos. But Ethan's narrative spread like wildfire. Mutual friends stopped inviting me to gatherings. Whispers followed me at the grocery store. "Poor Ethan," they'd say. "Clara just gave up on him." I wanted to scream. But who would believe me? Ethan was the charmer, the success story. I was just the ex-wife who couldn't keep up. Then came the family reunion. Ethan's cousin invited me, probably out of pity, to their annual gathering at Diane's sprawling lake house. I almost declined, but something in me snapped. I was tired of being the scapegoat. I packed a single bag, drove 3 hours, and walked into a room full of people who'd already judged me. Ethan was there, holding court, his new girlfriend, a sleek, corporate type named Lauren, on his arm. His parents fawned over her. Mia, his sister, gave me a hesitant smile but said nothing. I felt like an intruder in a life I'd helped build. The first night was torture. Diane made a toast to new beginnings, her eyes flicking toward Lauren. Ethan smirked, clinking glasses, while I gripped my wine stem so hard it nearly snapped. I overheard his father tell a cousin, "Clara never appreciated Ethan's drive." That was it. I couldn't let them rewrite me anymore. I needed an ally, someone who'd listen. Mia, Ethan's younger sister, was my only shot. She'd always been kind, even if she'd stayed loyal to her brother. I decided to tell her the truth, the secret Ethan thought he'd buried forever. The next morning, I found Mia by the lake, sketching in her notebook. She looked up, startled, as I sat beside her. "Mia," I said, my voice steady despite the knot in my chest, "I need to tell you something about Ethan. Something he's hidden from everyone." Her eyes narrowed, but she didn't stop me. I took a breath and began. 2 years ago, Ethan's startup had been on the brink of collapse. He'd burned through his investors' money, promising results he couldn't deliver. Desperate, he'd turned to a shady lender, a guy named Victor who operated in the gray edges of legality. Ethan borrowed $200,000, swearing he'd pay it back in 6 months. He didn't. Instead, he used our joint savings, my savings, from years of freelance work to cover his debt, without telling me. When I noticed the account was drained, he lied, saying it was a business investment. I trusted him, even as our bills piled up. But that wasn't the worst part. Victor wasn't just a lender. He was connected to people who didn't take kindly to unpaid debts. When Ethan missed payments, Victor's men showed up at our house. I was home alone, designing in my office. When two guys knocked, they didn't touch me, but their presence, cold, threatening, made it clear Ethan was in deep. I confronted him that night, and he admitted everything: the loan, the lies, the danger he'd put us in. He begged me not to tell his family, saying it would ruin his reputation. I kept his secret, thinking I was protecting our marriage. Instead, I was protecting a liar. Mia's face paled as I spoke. "Clara, why didn't you say anything?" she whispered. I laughed bitterly. "Who would have believed me? Your family thinks I'm the problem." She looked away, guilty. I pressed on. "He's still paying Victor off. Mia, that's why he's pushing this perfect image with Lauren. He needs her connections to keep his head above water." Mia's hands trembled, her sketchbook forgotten. I hated hurting her, but she needed to know who her brother really was. That night, the reunion dinner was a powder keg. Ethan stood to give a speech, all charisma and false humility, thanking his family for their support through tough times. I couldn't take it anymore. I stood, my chair scraping loudly, and all eyes turned to me. "Tough times," I said, my voice shaking but clear. "Like when you drained our savings to pay off your illegal loan." "Ethan, or when you let your family blame me for your mess." The room went silent. Diane gasped. Ethan's face turned ashen, his charm crumbling. "Clara, stop," he hissed. But I wasn't done. I turned to Mia, who nodded slightly, her eyes hard. "Tell them, Mia," I said. "Tell them what you know." Mia stood, her voice soft but steady. "Ethan borrowed money from a guy named Victor. He put Clara in danger. He lied to all of us." The room erupted. Diane demanded answers. Ethan's father shouted at Mia to stop. Lauren looked like she'd been slapped, her perfect facade cracking. Ethan tried to spin it, claiming it was a misunderstanding. But the truth was out. His parents' faces shifted from anger to doubt. Lauren excused herself, her heels clicking as she fled the room. I didn't feel triumph, just a heavy relief. For the first time in years, I wasn't carrying Ethan's lies alone. The fallout was swift. By morning, Ethan's parents were questioning him, not me. Mia apologized, tears in her eyes, for believing his story. I didn't blame her. She'd been fed the same lies as everyone else. Ethan left the reunion early, alone, his charm no longer enough to save him. I heard later that Lauren ended things, unwilling to tie herself to his sinking ship. Victor's name came up in hushed conversations, and I knew Ethan's reckoning was far from over. I drove home feeling lighter, not because I'd won, but because I'd reclaimed my truth. Ethan's lies had cost me friends, a family, a life I'd loved, but they couldn't take my voice. I rebuilt my career, moved to a new city, and started painting again, something I hadn't done since college. Each stroke felt like a step toward myself. The experience taught me something brutal but necessary. Silence can protect the wrong people. I kept Ethan's secret to save our marriage, but all it did was save his ego. Speaking up cost me relationships, but it gave me freedom. I don't know what's next for Ethan. Part of me hopes he finds a way out, not for his sake, but because I'm done carrying hate. What I do know is that I'm done being the villain in someone else's story. What do you think? Was I right to expose Ethan's secret? Or should I have stayed silent to keep the peace? Share your thoughts. I'm curious to hear where you stand.